Right about now, you are listening to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, a show where we discuss living as a leader worth following, leading others to do the same, and in doing so, leaving a legacy for future generations. My name is Jimmy Gonzalez Jr., a learning and development professional and leadership coach, sitting down with my co-host Anthony Devon Watts Jr., an expert contact center leader that has effectively led and developed dynamic teams with high motivation. Together, we have over 30 years experience in the corporate game. Join us as we discuss our growth as leaders, share the lessons we've learned, and interview others to see how their leadership style was shaped as they were mentored by adversity. Legacy leaders, we are back at you with the Legacy in Leadership Podcast. This is episode 20. Which we are very excited about. I am your co-host, Jimmy Gonzalez Jr., along with my boy, Anthony Devon Watts Jr. And again, because this is NBA, our Mentored by Adversity series, actually the fifth installment in our series, another very good friend of mine, Jay Jackson, is with us today. Good evening, sir. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing well, man. I'm happy to be here, man. And congratulations on number 20.
Yes, thank you. We're definitely happy to have you. And yeah, we're excited about the 20th episode. We've been trucking along for the last about 4 months. And again, just very excited about the progress and this, what we call legacy leader tribe and community that is continuing to grow. So for our folks out there, again, so our hashtag legacy leaders, if you haven't done so yet, definitely want to make sure that you continue to rock with us and follow us on all social media platforms. Make sure that you follow us on Instagram at Legacy Leadership. You can find us on LinkedIn for our LinkedIn pros. Also on Facebook at Legacy in Leadership Podcast. We're on Twitter as well with the same handle at Legacy Leadership. And then, of course, wherever you're listening to us on all the major podcast platforms, make sure if you haven't done so already that you're liking the episodes, leave us some reviews. We truly, truly appreciate the reviews and the feedback that we're getting from you. And of course, if you're looking and watching on the YouTube channel, make sure that you subscribe, that you hit the little bell, give us a like, and then, hit the bell so you can get the alerts of all of the new videos that we have coming out and the bonus videos. We're starting to throw in some additional content for you guys and some bonus videos as well. So if you hit the alert, then you'll always be alerted to the new videos and you'll be good to go. And then make sure, that you're sharing the podcast, sharing the video with friends and family and other individuals that you feel want to and need to be a part of this legacy leadership tribe. So I hear something in the back. Somebody over there practicing.
Oh man, COVID got has school taking place at the house, so we definitely got a few lessons going on here.
Okay.
A few saxophone lessons.
Okay. We were talking a little bit about that. Just kind of reminiscing. Again, Jay we're going to get into just what he does and the work that he's doing in the community. But again, we go way back, and I will say again, very happy about the fact that another Evans graduate and alumni representing. And while we were friends as well, we were definitely bandmates. You were playing the trumpet. I also played the saxophone. So a lot of great memories following our fantastic football team in the early 90s.
That at one time at band camp. Absolutely.
So much fun. But it's definitely cool, man, back then and even now, just to see you from a creative perspective, leading in the community, leading your home, and hopefully inspiring the family and folks around you, again, to just continue to be creative and follow those particular pursuits. So for our listeners out there, definitely, again, an alum of Evans High School, but chairman and CEO of Rise, which is a media and production company. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the organization, the company itself?
Oh, man, phenomenal. Well, Rise, we're in the media and marketing space, man. So we launched this company, 10 years ago. Actually, we're hitting 10 years next year. And so, RISE stands for Recognizing the Young, Successful, and Empowered. And we really are storytellers at our core, man. We love telling dynamic and empowering stories. We're really about making sure that we control the narrative and are making sure that we're putting out, positive narratives, from communities of color. And so that's at the core of what we do. It's so much more, and we'll get into it, but that's at the core of what we do.
RISE, to elevate or increase in rank, status, position, reputation, fortune, influence, or power.
Wow.
Representing young adults, 25 to 45. I still fit within that range.
We about to change that because I'm about to age out of it. You're glad you brought that to my attention.
Absolutely, brother. Hey, yeah, we get
age is a state of mind. It's state of mind. You say that when you get older, right? Age is just a state of mind.
Yeah, man. But no, I'm actually excited, just to kind of talk with you, Jay, and hear a bit about what you're doing in the community. I think especially now more than ever, right? Because I know like most folks were probably all, waiting with bated breath to kind of see what the results of, this current election is. And, I would say, regardless of the outcome, for me specifically, I really hope more than anything, the level of civic engagement that people have had over this year, like that continues post-election, and people are really starting to think about ways that they can get involved. More importantly, not just with their federal government, but right in their communities. Like, how can we translate that same energy that's on the social media space to what's going on in the community? And so it sounds like you've been doing that. So I want to hear a lot more about that.
Man, you're so right. And to piggyback on what you just said, I actually just had it. So we're working on a development, and I know we're going to get into the details, but just to piggyback on what you just said, I had a meeting today at the property with the city councilwoman who is over the district of where we're doing this development at. And people overlook those local politicians, but they're the ones that have so much more of an impact on your community, right? And so, just had that meeting at the property with her, talking about the vision, and she was talking about doors that she can open up and resources that she can help bring to the project. So whether it's Trump or whether it's Biden, whoever ultimately wins the election, I'm sure we'll know by the time everything comes out. The reality is the people, the council members, the commissioners, the people right there on your right within your community, those are the people you definitely need to be engaged with, and you need to be need to understand, because it's not even from just a business standpoint, because business and politics goes hand in hand, but where the schools where your children grow to, and right, and where you live, all of those things are just so important in terms of knowing who your representatives are and engaging them, because they're the ones that have the greatest impact.
Well said, man. Well said.
Well, no, we can definitely just jump right in, man. So for us and for our listeners, tell us a little bit about you personally, professionally, and definitely, we definitely want to hear the story about RISE and how that got started and some of the wonderful work that you guys are doing right now in the community.
Man, thank you, Jimmy. The reality is, as you mentioned, I graduated from Evans High School, and the thing about Evans, we know that Evans was located in Pine Hills, right? And for people who may not be familiar with Pine Hills was also labeled Crime Hill. So that kind of gives you an idea of the type of community that it was where our school was located at. And so growing up, man, that's the kind of community that I came from. And it's interesting when you come from those type of communities, your exposure can sometimes be limited. And so when I was growing up, I idolized the wrong crowd. I hung out with the wrong people. And when you're young and you kind of come from those communities, you kind of put material things, right? Those material things are the things that you put value in, because you don't have a lot of material things. And so when you see people that are successful, you equate that to the material things that they have. And so, that was the things that I put value in growing up. And interestingly, man, I began to get exposed to different opportunities. And when I began to get exposed to those different opportunities, man, I understood the power of exposure, and I understood the power of stories, and great stories, and understanding people's stories. And so that was really the precipice behind Rise, when I graduated, I didn't take the path to college. I know a lot of people, do, and that's the path that they take. But that was a path that I was never pushed to because of the lack of exposure, because of the, I didn't have that, somebody pushing me from that perspective. So I went into the workforce, and I'll tell you a quick story that really kind of set the stage and planted the seed for me that really changed the direction of my life, man. I wound up getting this job working for Airborne Express, and many of you may be familiar with Airborne Express. You may not be, but very similar to FedEx or UPS. And I'll never forget, man. They gave me this route that was on the east side of town. Now we're from the west side, right? And so west side is kind of that's the predominantly black area. That's the that side of town. And so when they put me in this area that was the east side, that was like the more affluent area. And I wasn't very familiar with that area. And I remember telling the supervisors, man, put me on the west side. That's where I'm comfortable at, right? We like to be in a place where we're comfortable. And so I'm like, that's where I'm comfortable. I'm telling you, I can do a great job if you just put me in this area where I'm comfortable. And they said, no, we're going to put you, either work the east side or you find a new job. And so the first 2 weeks on that job, man, I'll never forget. I had this bad attitude and I hated it. I was delivering to all these people, residential houses, and for this first 2 weeks, just had a negative attitude. After 2 weeks, one day, man, I pulled up to this house, and it was like the biggest house I had ever seen at the time. I'm used to apartment complexes or shotgun houses, and I said, man, I have to know what it is that allow somebody. What do they do that they live in a house like this? And I went to that doorbell, and we know how the delivery drivers work. They go to the door, they leave the package, ring the doorbell, and they take off running, right? You never see them, right? They take off running and hop in their vehicle. And so but this particular day, man, I was standing there, and I remember shaking. I run the doorbell. It's 1:00 in the afternoon, and this gentleman answered the door in shorts and a t-shirt. And I said, well, sir, I'm your delivery driver. My name is Jay Jackson. And I was just wondering, what do you do for a living? You have a beautiful home. And he said, I run a business from my home. And I had never heard of this. And I said, you run a business from your home? And he said, yeah, I run a business from my home. And I said, well, I've never heard of that. So you're trying to tell me you don't go to work every day doing something that you hate doing, working with people that you don't like working with, fighting traffic, going there, fighting traffic, going home. You're trying to tell me, because that's all I've ever seen. And he says, no, I love what I do. And he brought me in his house that day. And, he had a internet-based business. And this was, we're talking back in 2000, not in 2000, but we're talking back in 97, 98, kind of dated myself. But, but that planted a seed, and I said, I don't know how, I don't know doing what, but one day, man, I would love to run a business from my home, and that really planted that entrepreneurial seed that began to be watered with so many other ventures that I've taken on since that time. So,
wow, man. So actually, no, that's powerful. What I love about that story, right, is to your point, it is the seed that ends up getting watered and then starts to bear fruit for future generations, because you had that one moment of being exposed to something different, something outside of your comfort zone. And you recognize, whether it be in that moment or in hindsight, the power of that exposure and hearing his story, seeing that this thing it's not intangible, it's not a dream, it can be a reality. This man is living it, right? And so I love the fact that where you're at now, with Rise, your whole focus is on being able to highlight similar stories and experiences of success for people of color, so that the kid growing up in a disadvantaged area doesn't have to rely on the luck of being assigned to the east side to get this exposure, right? Yeah. They can come to your organization and get that level of exposure. I think it's powerful, man. Powerful.
And there's a couple things, man. Number one, I always say finding is reserved for the seekers, and you got to go out and seek, right? And so ringing that doorbell that day, knocking on that door, man, that's what I always tell people. You got to go knocking on the doors metaphorically, right? And that was an interesting thing that happened. It also speaks to changing of the attitude. When we talk about leadership, it's about attitude. So that first 2 weeks on the job, I had a very poor attitude, right? And that situation, that experience changed my attitude. And from there, I began going to the supervisor saying, hey, listen, when you on the weekend, I want to work extra routes and put me in, more of these areas that I'm not familiar with. And then I began delivering to, the college campuses and to Lockheed Martin, and began just to have this curiosity. So that attitude shift really changed so much. And so I always say, success, man, it really begins with, your attitude and your state of mind. And so I just think that's so very important.
Yeah, real quick. So I got to share with you. We have a tradition on the pod. When we hear something that is really powerful, like we call it out as a bar. And when you said that finding is reserved for the seeking, that is a whole bar. For sure. That's definitely getting taken. I'm going to add that to my arsenal, man. That was awesome.
Yeah. Finding is reserved for the seekers, man. It's not for those who want it. It's not for those who want it, man, but it's those who go out and seek. You just can't hope and want, and you got to go out and seek, man. And those are the ones that get the doors open and get exposed to real opportunities, man. They put in the work and plant the seeds.
So from those early seeds that were planted, and you continuing to do that work, to knock on doors and seek opportunities, how did that lead you to Rise and kind of the start of Rise Interactive?
Phenomenal. So I ultimately did start my own business, man. And my first business that I started, I opened up a real estate company. And, I had bought my first house. I guess I've always had kind of this service mentality. I bought my first home, and I bought it at 22 years old. And I started out, I had bad credit, but I had a good job at the time, but I had bad credit and didn't have a lot of money saved. And so, we know how that all goes, but, I made the commitment. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to make this thing happen. So I got my credit straightened out and saved some money and wound up buying my first home at 22 years old. And so when I bought my first home, I said, man, how come more people don't own? Because it's just that sense of ownership, was certainly, again, it was a positive feeling. And my parents didn't own their home till I was there. They were probably in their mid 40s, at that point. And so I said, I need to find out how come more people of color from these communities don't own. Got into real estate, did well in it. The market was booming. And as a result, opened up my own real estate brokerage. And I really liked to then at that point hire, really begin to hire these agents who could come in and work for me, and I could train them. And we began scaling that. The success of that allowed me to invest in other. Now that entrepreneurial seed is planted and is watering and is thriving, and so I began to invest in other small mom and pop type businesses. I was I owned a hair salon that grew into a day spa. Never cut a single head a day in my life, man, but it was a nice cash flowing for us. And as a result of those successes, man, I would be asked to speak to I asked to speak to youth groups. I'm sorry. And, people say, well, how do you come from, crime hills and all of this negative background to, this success that you're experiencing as an entrepreneur? I had been recognized by the Orlando Business Journal and had won an Entrepreneur of the Year award. And as a result of that journey, man, I would speak to these youth. They would say, man, they would just gravitate to me after I got done speaking. And they say, we see athletes, right? And we see the entertainers and we see those people, but we don't see people like yourself, like you're running your own business. And at the time, I had a little less in the middle. We had a little less grade going on. I'm looking at Jimmy, man. Jimmy don't have any grade, man.
They're there, bro. They're there.
But reality is they would come up to me and I said, what are you talking about? There are just so many dynamic, people out here doing phenomenal things. And they said, well, we don't see them. And I said, well, I want to do something. We got to do something about that. And that's when, I always say entrepreneurs, man, they love problems. And, they love problems because every problem bears with it a seed of opportunity. And as a result, this was an opportunity. I said, I want to tell these stories. And so we launched Rise, and we started off as a magazine, interestingly, and this was 2011. And obviously magazines were going out of style. Everything's going digital, and we had a digital presence as well. But we did a full color glossy print publication, and I did it for a reason. I wanted people to take us serious. I didn't want people to see us as this little blog site, and so we did a full color glossy, and we would distribute that throughout the Central Florida area. And as RISE stands for Recognizing the Young, Successful, and Empowered. And we just told these great and dynamic stories. But even beyond that, we would host these events every time we released a new issue. And that was really where the business model for us was at. The magazine itself was a lost leader. And so we would do the RISE Awards and the Women on the RISE Honors. And pretty soon, companies began wanting to do business with us. Pepsi, State Farm, BB&T Bank. We were corralling hundreds of upwardly mobile young professionals in the room, and they wanted to connect with that demographic. And so pretty soon we had, Fortune 500 clients that were advertising, and we were doing marketing for them. That's that journey.
So many memories, man. I just, I think about throughout the years meeting you up. I think I ran into you like in a Walmart or something like that. We hadn't seen each other. And I remember you telling me the story about the real estate and about the hair salon. I'm like, man, look at this cat. Okay. you didn't mention it, but I also on social media, the book, I think it's called Cubicle to CEO.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even when I did Trinity Fitness, I also remember us meeting together, having lunch, and again, just the encouragement, the support that you were providing me at the time, and again, just the heart that you have for entrepreneurs and people who are trying to do big things in corporate America, in the community, and then the highlight for me too was the event that you hosted as well with, man, I just had his name and it just left my mind. The motivation. Yes, Les Brown. Yes. That was phenomenal as well. So, man, it's good to see all of those, listening to you tell the story, but also thinking in my mind, those memories and all those different spots along the way, kind of from the outside looking in, but kind of coming in and out, our relationship and friendship throughout that time. So pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Jimmy. And yes, you mentioned the book and the journey itself with RISE, man. It's just phenomenal. It's opened us up to, open me up to people that I put on my list. So I'm a very goal oriented person, man. And so I write down my goals and I like, okay. And I break it down. Like if there's people I want to meet, I'll put it down. And I'm not a starstruck type of person. So usually on my list is not the Beyonce's or the entertainers like that. I'm usually, I like people that have come from nothing, and not the entertainers don't, but I love business people, like, cause it's a whole different world.
Mindset.
It's a whole different mindset, right? When, you have to take this intellect and try to build something from it, and not necessarily just entrepreneurs, but people who have taken that their expertise and their intellect and either climbed the ladder in the corporate world or built something. And so, Les Brown was one of those people that I had on my list, man. And this goes to show the power of writing down your goals. He was always somebody that, I hit a dark point at one time, and I got into Les Brown and would listen to, I listened to some spiritual things, and then I would listen to him from a motivational perspective. And I put it out, I said, man, one day I want to meet Les. And I remember we were coming off, we had hosted an event, and as a result of a lot of things going on at the time, the event didn't go as well, and it kind of put me in the hole. And I was in this I was just in this negative state. And I'll never forget, man, I got this phone call, and it was like a Las Vegas number. And I didn't answer because, I was like, who is this calling me? You kind of screen your calls nowadays, right? And so I remember listening to I listened to the voicemail, like, okay, well, who is this? And it was Les Brown calling me, right? And he was calling me and left this motivational message. So somebody had told him about the work that we were doing with RISE and those type of things. And so here is this person that I had on my list of goals. And so my point is that, that list of goals, man, is so important, because you don't even know how these things will manifest if you just put it down and say, this is what I want to achieve. These are the places I want to go. These are the people that I want to meet, right? And I'll tell you, everybody that's been on my list of goals that I wanted to meet, it has manifested. And so goals are important.
Oh, that's awesome. So that was episode 17. Yeah, was
17.
all goal setting. So you just broke down some of the key points that we gave. It's how powerful it is to not just think about the things that you want to accomplish, but actually write them down. And again, how powerful it is how when you do that and you're looking at it, you're reading it, and you're putting plans together, how it just manifests itself as you put that work.
Yeah, man, you got to set that sail. I always say, man, it's like, our mind can be like this sailboat that's out on the water, man. And if you don't set the sail to where you want to go, man, you'll just blow all over the place, man. And so you just, that goal setting is basically like setting the sail. And so, that was the origin of Rise, and where we've manifested to, is just phenomenal. So we launched the company, as I shared with you all, in Florida. And, I love Florida, born and raised in Florida, but I knew that we wanted to scale and do what we were doing on a national scale. And so I said, okay, well, it's time to begin expanding. And we wanted to go to a larger market. Miami just wasn't the right fit for us. I went to New York for a little while just to kind of fill out that market. Way too massive of a market. I like New York. I love the mindset, the progressiveness of that market, but it was just way too massive for us to try to penetrate. And so, I came to Atlanta, man, and fell in love with Atlanta. And we ultimately moved the company here, I think about 5 years ago, man. And so, landed here and, made a bit of a pivot actually when we got here. So that's another thing, you certainly be stubborn with regards to the things you want to accomplish, but you got to be flexible with the path that gets you there. And so, we moved the company here and realized that there were some greater opportunities beyond what we were doing. Bigger market means bigger vision. And so that's what brought us to the next iteration of the company, Rise.
No, I like that, man. That's actually another bar, right? A bigger market, a bigger vision. I think that can apply not just, as an entrepreneur, definitely as an entrepreneur, but in any other, kind of industry, whether you're trying to work your way up that corporate ladder. I think a lot of times at entry level, you kind of have this idea of, if I'm entry level cubicle, like how do I become supervisor or lead, right? And as you get exposed to more and more of the organization, your vision starts to grow, and then you start to manifest some bigger things that you couldn't even fathom when you were just the entry level employee. So I love that.
Man, I agree. And speaking to that very same point, I'll tell you a frustration that I have when I deal with somebody that is in the corporate America, and it's something that I try to get them to see. And that what you just mentioned is so key, and that's looking at the company from a bigger perspective, right? So if you want to climb up that corporate ladder, you got to understand that you got to think the way the CEO or the leader of that company is thinking. And what they're doing is they're looking at the greater vision for the company. So they have to understand a little bit about each department. Whereas, what we do on an entry level, and what we do sometimes on that level is we're focused on our department and what can our department, just our department. But you really have to begin to understand, how does my department tie into this other department and this other department, and how does this affect the whole grand scheme of the company? Because I'll come to somebody and they may work in one department, and I'm pitching them, how we could do business with them that could even be beneficial for that corporate company. But they're so focused in tunnel vision on what they do, they can't even see the grand scheme. And I'm like, okay, well, I see I'm gonna have to go above you.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to go above you. Well, this would have been a feather in your cap if you had brought this and it was a win. This is how you begin to curry favor if you're helping and doing things that help move the company forward and move the bottom line, and not just accomplish these things for your department, but looking at it from a bigger perspective. And so, that speaks to what you just said, man, shared.
No, absolutely, man. You have to maintain, especially in the corporate space, you have to always maintain like a biz dev mindset, regardless of what your role is in the organization, right?
Absolutely.
So you kind of talked about the evolution, right? Kind of the inception of the organization, the evolution, balancing all of these different responsibilities, man. I gotta know, like, how do you manage to keep yourself organized as an entrepreneur, right? When you are literally it all, right? You're the CEO, marketing, you're the driving force, you're the vision, right? You're in the minute details, and you're also 30,000 feet up, making sure that you're still making the right progress. Like, how do you maintain your time and just making sure you stay organized?
Man, it's really about aligning with people who are strong in the areas where you're weak. And that's really what it boils down to, man. I like to I know a little bit about everything, and I know enough to know when I'm bringing somebody on that knows what they're talking about versus somebody who's just dabbling or playing around. You got A+ players, and you got people that are C players that are just average, right? And I always say, just extraordinary is just that little bit extra, right? It's just that little bit extra that's extraordinary compared to ordinary. And so that's really what I try to do is, man, just identify people who are extraordinary in what they do in the areas that I'm weak at, and just really try to align with them. And so it's about building out those key people. And sometimes I'll be honest with you, when you're starting out, it's tough. And if I'm going to be real here, sometimes when you're starting out with something, and Jimmy, when Trinity Fitness, and you were building this company, sometimes I always say there's committed and then there's competent, right? There's a difference, right? So sometimes the committed people, they aren't always the most competent, right? When it comes to doing stuff, they aren't necessarily the A+ players, but they are very committed to the cause, and you can rely on them. And then as you begin to grow and as you begin to scale, then you have to begin to identify, okay, well, now this person is committed, but they don't really have the skills in this area that can help us elevate above that level. And so you then begin to have to make that shift, and it's hard sometimes. It's hard because you got these people who have been committed, and you can still find ways to keep them involved. But you also, if you're trying to scale, you got to begin to say, okay, well, I need now somebody who is competent and they understand, and they're an A+ player, and they understand what we need to get us to that next level and above.
No, I like that, especially because when we talked about time management in a prior episode, one of the things we broke down was around delegation, right? And I think that's what you're kind of touching on, understanding what tasks require my level of expertise, and then what tasks don't. And if it doesn't require my level of expertise, how can I get that task to the person who is the expert in that space? But I also really appreciate you bringing up the difference between committed, right, and competent. Because that is something that I can imagine you run into, especially as an entrepreneur. If you're building something from the ground up, you may have some people that are on fire for the vision, the mission, but they don't necessarily have the robust skill set to take the organization to the next level. It may be a good fit for where we're at right now, but when we talk about scaling in the future, it just may be a little bit beyond their depth. And that's where you as a leader have to be able to navigate that transition while still keeping them engaged, but moving towards somebody that may be a little bit more competent to get you to where you need to be. So I really appreciate you sharing that word of advice.
Now, man, hey, I'm just speaking from real life, but they say real life situations.
Yeah, that's helpful, man. It's helpful. So we talked a little bit about just kind of how you built the organization, how you managed to stay organized and on track and meet all your professional demands. So let's talk a little bit about at what point did you know like leadership itself was your calling, right? Like I know we touched on it maybe just a little bit, and your entrepreneurial story is definitely there. We can see where kind of that passion and that grind to want to create something different for yourself and your family comes from. But how did you know that at the end of the day, like leadership, being an influencer in your community and with other people of color and other young men, was your calling at the end of the day?
That's a great question, and it really boils down to, I mean, this is biblical, and really what it boils down to is I just like to serve, man. I just like to serve, and they all, the Bible says the if you want to be great, the greatest of thee, is a servant to the least of thee.
Mhm.
And so everything that I've always done has always been about serving, right? Being of service to somebody. I mean, Rise was created because I wanted to serve these individuals who said they didn't see these stories, and where we're evolving to with Rise Creative Village. And so it's always about serving. And so when you have that commitment or that desire to serve, then I believe that God begins to give you this vision. And so what you become servant to is that vision of serving, and you begin sharing that vision, right? You just begin sharing that vision with people, and the more and more you share that greater vision with individuals, you begin to find people who align with the vision. It may not even be you; it's that vision, right? So they are attracted to that vision that you have, and so I think that's really what it boils down to. So when it comes down to leadership, I mean, I know I realized because I began to be responsible for people, I had to develop my leadership skills, but it really just boiled down to being just wanting to serve. And if I always tell people, if you look at the greatest people in history, or some of the people who have achieved a level of greatness, they all had different personalities, right? They all had these different personalities and character traits and things like that. But the thing that they all had in common, if they were truly great and seen, history as recorded them, and you look back, you say, man, that was a great person. They all were about serving, right? It's always been tied to somebody that was committed to serving others. And so I think that's really what you got to begin to understand, and you begin to do. Yeah.
I appreciate that, man, especially because the thing that I take away from that message, which I wholeheartedly agree, right? It's more about the spirit and the intent of wanting to serve individuals and doing right by others. And that is the motivator for expanding your skill set, right? It's not that you have to come to leadership as this finished product where, I know how to give the resounding ball coach speech, and I know how to, help you navigate the situation. I don't have to be a polished product from that perspective. But if my heart is genuinely rooted in the desire to serve, and to serve you and to serve others, people see that, they recognize that. You can't fake that. It's authentic, and people gravitate towards it.
Yes.
And then to your point, because I also believe that it is biblical, right? That at that point, God puts you on that path or creates that vision for you to say, this is what you need to do in order to now become better, right? And have more tools so that you can serve more. So I think that's awesome, man. I think that's awesome.
You're totally on point, and so I'm always looking at ways to enhance the leadership skills, because I know that as we begin to scale, and we begin to bring in more people with what we're into what we're doing, there's just different levels to it, and and you got to begin to develop your skill set. You also got to align with mentors who can provide you with some insight. And it's so funny, because as I elevate to the next level, I realize, man, I have to align with, mentors that are on that level, or that are greater, on a greater level, because the challenges that you begin to face are they get greater as the more you begin to scale, and the more you begin to grow your company, and more you begin to serve. And so we got challenges now that we're dealing with as we scale. So absolutely.
Powerful, man. Powerful stuff.
Yeah, I'm just taking notes of all the nuggets that are being dropped. And when we talk to our legacy leaders about what does it really mean to be a leader worth following? You mentioned earlier, you have to have competence. Yeah, you need to be committed, but you have to have a certain level of confidence. It really needs to be about serving others and not serving yourself. And then humility, right? So being humble, though, helps me to realize that I don't have it all figured out. And in order to do that, yeah, I can read and I could do these different things to increase my knowledge and to develop my skills. But let me go sit at somebody else's feet. And let me get mentors that are going to be able to teach me and help me and encourage me along the way so that I can continue to increase my knowledge, my skills, and take it to that next level. Like you said, the more responsibility that I get and the further that I'm trying to go, the person who I am today is probably, or even the team and the person that we have today are probably not what we need that to get us where we want to go tomorrow. So in order to get to that future state, into that vision, we're going to have to level up. We're going to have to level up our knowledge, our skills. All of those things are just great points again and fit right into what it means to truly be a leader worth following.
And you mentioned something, Jimmy. You mentioned about humbleness, and I believe in that. But I'll also add something to that I've noticed, shifted in me, right? And that is as we begin to, as I began to develop my skills and we began to scale. I've always been humble and hey, I want to learn. But then there became a shift where the confidence kicked in, and there's times where I'm talking with my team, and we just had this with our the person who handles communications for us, and she was saying, well, hey Jay, with our project, here's a couple other projects that are very similar. This could be competition for us. They're operating in the same space, and this could be competition. And it got to I'm at a point now where I'm like, no, they're not really competition, because I know, right? I know the lane that we're in, and I know who we're looking to serve. And if anything, they can be collaborative partners. But there is no competition with the vision that we have, and I don't even want to compare myself to them, because we're in a different lane. We're doing our own thing, and we are. I know the vision that I have, and they don't have my vision. They may be operating in the same space, but they don't have my vision. And so now I'm confidence on level 10, right? You know what I mean? Confidence on level 10. And so I still want to learn, but at the same, I'm still open to learning. But at this stage, I'm like, no. I know that, what we're working on now, they're going to come, they're going to want to be a part of what we're doing. And there's going to be, and we need to look at ways to begin to collaborate as well. So there becomes a shift.
No, well said. I respect that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, as a leader, when you're looking to influence and you're looking to, maybe you're not looking for followers, but people want to follow folks that are confident. So yeah, there needs to be a certain level of humility, but you also have to be confident in your skill set, right? And your competence level and the vision that you have, and knowing that this is where we're going. These are the things that we need to do in order to get there. And like you said, and it's really important what you said about knowing the lane that we're in and also knowing who we're trying to serve. So I know my audience, I know the lane we're in, I know the direction that we're going, and I'm super confident in that I'm not worrying about whatever the people are doing, because this is where we're at. And I love how you said too, they could be a collaborative partner, but they're not somebody who I'm going to necessarily fear or be afraid of as competition, because I know the vision, I know the direction that we're headed, and again, who we're trying to serve.
Absolutely.
So we talked. No, go ahead.
No. What I haven't talked about, and I don't want to take it, but we haven't talked about the evolution of Rise, right? So I've talked about the magazine, and we can get into this at some point, but where we are now since moving to Atlanta, what we've evolved to, and how we look to be of even greater service, and how the vision has evolved from that magazine. I wish I had one in front of me that I could hold it up. I have to get one, but
by all means, man. I'm excited to. Again, this was probably a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn, and I see your post, and my excitement just went to another level. I realized, again, your vision and what you're trying to do, not trying, but what you are doing in the community and where you're going with this particular project. So by all means, I want to hear all about it.
Absolutely, man. And so I mentioned how, we moved the company to Atlanta, and we just saw, even greater opportunity. So we were still doing the same thing, but it was interesting, about Atlanta, great market. I do like it here because, very progressive. But what you also have is you got people that are operating on a different level than what we were used to, where we were coming from. And so, what we were doing, it was small time in the market that we were moving to. So, we went from being a big fish in a small pond to being, this little teeny tiny tadpole in a much bigger fund. And that's when I made the statement, bigger market mean bigger vision. And so, we kept doing what we were doing, but as I mentioned, entrepreneurs always looking for, opportunities. We're not, they're looking for problems, right? Because they know every problem bears with it a seed of opportunity. And as we were working with these creatives who were working with on the storytelling, one of the things that is going on within this market here in Atlanta is you got a lot of production and film and music, and it's just this creative hub. And we know about hip hop music and all of this stuff that was birthed out of Atlanta, a market like Atlanta. And so we work with a lot of these creators because we were creating content for these brands and and doing marketing. And I would talk to a lot of these creators and I say, hey man, you got multi-billion-dollar film and production market taking place here in Atlanta. I know you're taking advantage of that. And they said, well, and I don't even know how to get plugged in. And so one of the things that we know about creatives is they're very good at creating, don't always understand business, right? And so, and that's a whole different mindset of how do you land, working on a set of a 10 or $50 billion, movie production, right? If I'm a photographer or if I'm a videographer, how do I go from, just doing, stuff with individuals to landing on one of those type of projects? And so that's what we saw a real opportunity, because again, serving, I'm looking at these creatives and they're having a problem where they're doing okay, but they're not tapping into this multi-billion-dollar, production market here, which is all about storytelling. And these are creatives who understand storytelling. They're telling story through multimedia, digital media, things like that. And so it all tied in to the core of what we believe in. And these are creatives that want to tell unique stories that aren't often told, that goes back to the narrative of us seeing those positive images. We think about Black Panther and how positive that was for, the African American community to see this Black superhero on the big screen, right? And that was very powerful. And now you got you got kids, instead of being Superman or Batman, they want to be, T'Challa, and so, things like that. And so that birthed this whole concept of what we call Rise Creative Village, man. And Rise Creative Village is a project where we recently purchased a former Atlanta public school, which was not an easy process, but we purchased a former school that has been closed for about 16 years, man. So you got this property that's 31,000 square feet sitting on 4 acres of land that's just been sitting dormant and vacant, man. And we're converting it into this content production studio and development incubator for creatives that operate in the film, music, and digital media industry. And so now we will have our own studio to tell great and dynamic stories that get back to the core of where the vision all started from. And now we can, provide this incubator for these creatives. And another unique thing about it, man, that we're excited about is it's less than a mile, or it's about a mile from Tyler Perry Studios, who is probably one of the most well-known storytellers right now from our community. And so we're just excited because it just creates a great opportunity. We're bringing together film and music and people who are doing the things that you all are doing. I mean, right now you all have a platform where you're allowing people to tell these stories and get the inspiration and the resources that they need to develop themselves. And so we're creating a hub to house all of that. And the thing about it is, what I also love about it, when you're in the media space, niche is important, right? You gotta speak to a specific audience. You gotta know your audience because you gotta speak to your audience. If if you're a Republican, you're gonna watch Fox, and Fox caters to the Republicans. If you're a Democrat, you're gonna watch MSNBC, right? And that's the media. That's the way the media works. But with this is creatives as a whole. So now we get to expand and we get to serve the creative community as a whole. Now we know that communities of color often are disproportionately have less access to opportunities, so of course that's important to us. But now we're just being able to serve an even greater market of people and expand upon the vision. So while we're working on this first location and getting this first location open, the vision then begins to launch into other markets and really begin to build this creative, as we call it, ecosystem, And so that's really what it's about, man. And so serving, again, goes back to the core, right? We want to serve and serve these people who have these dynamic talents that are often undervalued.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate kind of what the most exciting aspect of that, right, is the fact that you guys are providing, a platform and resources for these stories to be told. And I think, again, you can't understate the value of storytelling. Like you went back to, some of the individuals that their name has echoed throughout history, right? These are folks that we have never seen with our own eyes, but we know their accolades. We know their stories. We know the stories of Alexander the Great. We know the story of, Caesar. We know Julius Caesar. We know the story of Napoleon. We know the story of all of these individuals, right, where their stories have reverberated through history. And it's because somebody has told their story over and over and over and over again. And so it's not that, necessarily that there weren't other great individuals that were around at that time, but maybe those stories were never articulated. Those stories were never expressed. And so they've gotten lost in history. And, I think about even right now, with my youngest Lennox, so much of his development is driven, especially he's 1 year old, right? So much of his development, his early formative years is being driven by the stories that he's getting exposed to, not just from me and, and his mother, but also, when he's watching TV, right, when he's listening to music, all of these things are helping to shape his worldview and what he, where he sees his value is in the world. And so to your point, the more that you're able to create a platform for people of similar backgrounds, similar upbringings, people who may traditionally have not been able to tell their stories, right, even though they may have compelling stories, to give them a space to do that, I think is extremely exciting, man. And I think anything. So I'm a firm believer. Anything that you can do in order to elevate the creative, right, and help the creative be able to connect and tell their stories and kind of tell the next great American novel, whatever that may be, or American story, right? That story of diversity is going to be powerful and have an impact on generations to come, man. So I'm super excited about where Rise is heading, man. It sounds like a awesome mission, an awesome journey.
Man, we're excited about it as well, brother. We are excited about it as well, man. And so you totally understand where we're coming from. And what I also love about this is that, we are so gifted, we are so talented, as a people. But this particular facility allows us to bring a lot of that talent together under one roof, right? So I may be great at cinematography. I may be great at filming and doing video production and things like that. But now I have the potential to connect with somebody who's great at sound and audio engineering, right? And I might, then be able to create. I might be in this environment now where somebody who's great at storytelling, who's great with the pen, but I got all of these stories. I just don't know how to bring them to life. And so now I can connect with this videographer who can shoot these things, and I can connect with this audio engineer who can really sound mix this thing for me. And so we just create this environment, and then I can connect with somebody who is creating these tracks, and they can put some music and a soundtrack behind what we're doing. And so now you're creating this environment where, as before, all of these talented people were fragmented all over the place. Now we can bring them all together under one roof. And the business side and what I'm good at is building relationships. So we're meeting people from Amazon, meeting with people from Amazon Studios and some of these other, other more corporate brands that need these stories. And so now we can also help to not only bring these creatives together, but then help to facilitate connections to real opportunities within the industry for them to be paid for that creativity and that culture that they bring.
Awesome.
Make sense?
Perfect.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I just, again, I get, literally getting goosebumps just listening to you kind of tell the story. I get excited, man, about the opportunity that you're trying to create. Obviously, us having a friendship and just being sincerely happy for you and happy for the community. And it's great when somebody is telling a story and they're casting a vision and you can see it. And obviously, having seen some of the pictures and stuff and the work that's going on right now and the future state, it's just exciting. It's inspirational. And I think about, those different people who are going to be in that spot, doing all of those things that you just mentioned, making videos, filming, creating music. I told you, maybe you would have a chance to go down there one day and, record one of our podcast sessions.
That would be phenomenal, man. You all come up for a week once we get open and things, and maybe come up for a weekend, and you all line up multiple. There's some great stories, so you all line up multiple things, right? And so just all the opportunities and it started and to kind of piggyback, and I know we're probably running out of time, but when I started this whole Rise Creative Village concept, man, they say great ideas often have lonely childhoods. Great ideas often have lonely childhoods, and basically what that means is that you might have this idea, and I'm talking about casting vision, but everybody can't see it initially, and so sometimes it's just you, right? And so I was telling people about this whole Rise Creative Village concept, and there was not a lot of belief in it. There was not a lot of people that wanted to get behind the concept. And then when we found this school property, I found this school property, and I said, hey man, this could be it. And I mean, you're talking about a building that's been vacant for 16 years. So people come in, man, Jay, are you crazy? Look at this building, right? And it was a solid building, but you got windows busted out, and homeless people have been living in the building and things like that. And so, but I could clearly see this vision for this thing and what it could ultimately be. And so I just stayed true. I stayed committed to the vision and committed to the impact that it could have, and that, and the why. And so when we talk about leadership, man, you got to find the why, man. And that's where that service comes in. And I knew that we could really I knew and could see the impact. That thing that you could see now, Jimmy, I could see it clearly when I was walking on that property, and when people were telling me I was crazy, I was committed. And it took us 2.5 years because APS, I mean, they didn't want to sell it to me. They're like, who is this guy, right? Who are we turning this property over to? And so it took a while, man. I had to jump through all kind of hoops. They didn't make it easy, but I was committed. And now, I mean, we have a meeting coming up at the property Saturday where we're gonna do some social distancing, but we have people from these various different industries who are leaders in these industries, in the entertainment world, music. And I mean, we're bringing these people together. They're coming and meeting at the property because now they see the vision. Now they want to be a part of it. And I'm talking about notable names who we can't, it's a little early for me to mention, but now we're starting to get some of those people on board that can open up even more doors for us and really begin to get even more buy-in to where, Rise, pretty soon Rise Creative Village is going to be a name that people are going to be hearing in terms of the what we're building and things like that. And so it all started, man, with that vision. And so if I can speak to anything with regards to leadership to people, man, stay true to your vision, stay committed, stay faithful, stay prayed up, keep believing, and don't give up. You have to pivot. You might have to shift. You might have to, recalibrate, and that's fine. But understand what is your why and stay committed and keep pushing, and pretty soon, man, people are calling you. It was people who I was calling. I'm like, man, I got this going on. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Emailing them, and they weren't hitting me back, and now they're reaching out to me. Hey, man, I want to find out how I can be involved. And that's fine with me. I'm like, absolutely, come on in. You didn't ask me before, but that's fine. So, man.
Now that was great words of advice, for our legacy leaders out there that are listening. And I'm just sitting here writing, some of those nuggets down. Stay true, stay committed to your vision. And I know Devon and I kind of looked at each other as you were saying it. Know your why, because we've been talking about that almost every session over the last probably 2 episodes, about goal setting and productivity. But in all those things, right, it's helping you to achieve your purpose and to achieve your vision. But if you don't know why you're doing this in the first place, I do have one more question for you, because you're going to hit adversity, right? And if you don't have a solid grasp on your why and that vision, it's going to be easy to give up. Or to say, you know what, this is not worth it. So talk to us about, in the past or maybe even recently, some of the adversity that you've gone through. And as a leader, it's easy to lead through the easy times, but how do you lead through that adversity?
We definitely face some difficult times, man. I mean, going through this process was not an easy one. And, one of the things I can say, man, I stayed true to my why. And this is something that I believe in, that we all have a purpose, man. I believe that we all have a God-given purpose. And that was what got to me, man, is like, I know there's a purpose for what I'm doing, man. And I know that there's, something greater that I'm supposed to accomplish. And I'll tell you what wound up happening. I didn't give up, and I kept pushing. And every time I hit a roadblock, it got to the point where, man, I was like, okay, God, I've done everything that I could do. I've done, I'm going to take it to the spiritual level here, because that's what I know, had a help me through. And every single time I put in the work now, I put in the work, but every single roadblock, and I didn't, I knew long term, I'm like, okay, well, I know I'm going to have to face some roadblocks way down there, but I'm not going to let that stop me. We're working. I mean, this project itself is a $10 million project, right? And if I would have said, man, I don't even know how in the world I'm going to get $10 million, right? If I'd have started there, I would have stopped. I would have quit. But I'm like, okay, well, the first thing I need to do is get this thing under contract, right? And so I need $10,000 to get this thing under contract. I'll figure, I got to tackle that hurdle first. And so that's what I would say, focus, just have the bigger vision and then tackle one hurdle at a time. I got that first, I had that $10,000, put that escrow deposit down. Now we got to go through that pre-purchase stuff. Commercial is a lot more expensive. So now I got to figure out this next hurdle. I know sooner or later I got to get this $10 million hurdle, but I'll worry about that later. I got to keep going, and I got to trust and have faith that at every step of the way, if I put in the work, that, he's going to open up the door. And I can't tell you, that is the, exactly how it worked. And if I had it, I don't have it in front of me, but I can show you that letter of intent now for that $10 million that we needed to do the development of the project. Now I have it, right? Now I have it. But, if I had started and thought about that, 2.5 years ago when I first started working on this, I would have been dead in the water.
Yeah, stay true, stay committed, and what I didn't say, but I have it written down, is stay prayed up.
Yes,
and it's just so important, man. Like you said, to know, maybe you don't have it, it's not 100% clear, but knowing it in your heart and your spirit, your God-given purpose, and staying faithful and staying committed to that, and knowing through there's going to be tough times. You have to put in the work, but sometimes it's like, what, I'm doing these things, but like it's going to take divine intervention in order to make these things happen. And I'm going to have faith that with my work and my faith in God and the prayer that I'm doing, that all of those things are going to come together.
Absolutely. And one last thing, man, I'll say this is, you may not have it all together, man. You may not have it all together. We're redeveloping a property that has been vacant for 12 years. And I had real estate background, but I've never developed, a 31,000 square foot property where, on some of the land we're building apartment complexes. It's going to be live, work, play. And this is, greater than what I even initially envisioned. And if you would have talked to me 2.5 years ago, I would have, you would have asked me some questions about development. I wouldn't have been able to answer them. And at the time, but I didn't let that stop me. And now, I'm meeting with the architects and I'm meeting with the, and now I'm sharing with them how we're going to do this in development plans. And I taught throughout the process, I won't even say I taught myself, I began to, knock on doors and connect with people who had expertise in those areas, but I didn't have it all figured out in the beginning. And so I think that's important though, because I think a lot of times people look at something that they want to achieve and they see it to be so overwhelming because, okay, well, I want to do this, but I've never done anything like this before. And so that gives them pause, right? And they say, well, you know what? It just seems so massive and I don't know how, if I can figure this part out, or I don't know this part, they let that stop them. And I tell you, don't let that stop you. You move forward, but you move forward and you be curious. You knock on those doors. That's, ring those doorbells. It goes down to finding, again, is reserved for the seekers. And I began to seek out information and seek out insight in those areas where I was weak. And, we've gotten to this far. So I'm thankful.
Well, I am thankful that we sought you out, my brother, to come onto the podcast and provide all of these golden nuggets to our legacy leaders. Did you have any additional questions or anything, Devon?
No, man, this has been great. I just want to reiterate, man, this has been a great experience to, kind of hear your story, Jay, and really hear how, literally adversity has mentored you, from those very early years of, picking up your first delivery route, right, to now delivering knowledge, right, to our legacy leaders and other individuals. Man, this has been an awesome experience.
Man.
So for our legacy leaders, man, let them know how they can find you on social media and start following you, start following Rise, and getting some more details about the work that you guys are doing in the community.
Oh, man, phenomenal. So they can go on Instagram where Rise Creative Village, and Rise is with a Y. So it's unique spelling. But RYSE Creative Village, or at RYSE Creative Village on IG. Same thing on Facebook. And then on Twitter, it's Rise Creative Village is VLG. But yeah, so you connect with us on all of those handles, and
awesome.
Yep, doing it right now.
There you go. Rise, representing our young adults out there, creators striving to make something out of their lives. Man, for individuals determined to rise to the top because they understand the bottom is just too crowded.
Absolutely.
So to our legacy leaders out there, the question is, are you on the rise? Again, phenomenal conversation, phenomenal time. I appreciate you, my brother, spending some time with us. For our legacy leaders, again, you just got Jay's handle and all of the different ways that you can follow Rise and get more information on the projects and on the company itself and what they're doing in the community. Again, you can also continue to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Legacy Leadership, on LinkedIn and Facebook, Legacy in Leadership podcast. Remember, take that snapshot, click, and then go ahead and go to your stories on Instagram. Tag myself at Coach_Jimmy G Jr. You can tag Devon at Leadership Docent, and leave us some comments, especially about this particular episode, what you thought about it, how you felt, the inspiration I'm sure you got, and some of the golden nuggets that maybe we didn't mention, but I know that we're there throughout this conversation. We'd love to hear from you guys as well. And again, make sure that you share the podcast, share the YouTube channel, this episode specifically with your friends. Not just for the golden nuggets, but again, to back Jay and back Rise and what they are doing in the community in Atlanta, and opening up doors and making opportunities for young creators to be able to tell their story and to help others tell their story and spread. When we know so many times our stories have been forgotten, they have been buried. And in this day and age, it's just so important for us to continue to collaborate, to communicate, and share these stories in these different mediums and methods that are out there and available to us. So yeah, thank you, Jay, for your time, and thank you for what you're doing in the community, because it's important, it's special, it's needed. And again, as a long-term friend, I just appreciate again what you're doing out there. So for our legacy leaders, again, we appreciate you guys very much. Until next time, God bless and stay encouraged, y'all. Take care.
Rage on that beat, going crazy.
You have just listened to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, hosted by Jimmy Gonzalez and Devon Watts. Thank you, and we hope that you live, lead, and leave a legacy worth remembering. Until next time.